Serious, men of Reddit who have been arped by women, what's your story? For 5 years when I was a kid, 5-9. My older neighbor, 9-13, taught me to kiss. Promising gifts. Showed me PRN calling a class. And 4 weeks arped me while my mother was at work. I was a dumb kid. She was one of my only friends. Even though I never liked that. She told me to keep it a secret from anyone. And for a while I did. She probably was abused herself by her dad. But I can't forgive for the trauma she caused. It has been 6 years. But I still remember me crying and she slapping my face and telling to shut up and enjoy. After that I finally told my mom. She was shocked. Eventually she moved out to stay with her mother. To the men who were clearly violated saying they were technically arped. Just say arpe. Because that is what it is. It is okay to call it what it is. In high school, my girlfriend started trying to give me a blowjob. But my parents were in the next room. I kept telling her no. But she said if I didn't let her, she'd tell everyone that I arped her. So, she arped me instead. She fed me alcohol followed by a Xanax. This was in my party hard days. So of course I never said no to any of them. But coming out of a blackout with her on top me was not pleasant. And definitely a wake up call. She was my babysitter. And older cousin. I just remember she told to lay down on the floor one day while she was watching us. I had to be 7-8 at the time. She made me take my shorts off and started doing things until she got on top. I just remember it hurting more than anything else. I've only told my GF and a close friend. Nobody in my family knows. I'm 30 now. She married with kids. I haven't really had interactions with her outside of a random run-in at Walmart a couple years back. But I always think about it and I believe that played a factor into some of my sexuality. I was 12 and was groomed by this 32-year-old woman that I met online. I didn't know any better back then. But I didn't know how to love anyone proper for my entire young adult life. Sort of similar situation happened to me. Though not by a woman. At 7 years old. I was sexually assaulted by another kid that was my best friend at the time. He was 10. His family were migrant farm workers on my family's farm. I used to hang out at their place and have dinner quite frequently. I remember his mom and dad very well. They were very nice people. One afternoon he and I were playing in the yard. Doing kid. Digging holes and stuff. I don't remember every little detail. But I do distinctly remember the assault happening. For years I had repressed the assault. I am recently dealing with it in therapy. But, looking back on the situation, I feel like this was learned behavior. I can't help but feeling the same thing might have happened to him. Perhaps from one of his siblings. I've tried to reach out to him recently. But haven't gotten any response. Starts as it often does. Out for a drink with a friend, lady. Ended up chatting with a lot of new folk. Met some girl who was a friend of a friend. She was sober for the night. And ended up offering me and my friend a ride home when we decided to go. Cool. Cheaper than Uber. I ended up getting wasted. Rest of the story is as recounted to me by my friend. End of the night as we heading home. Girl asks where friend lives. Friend says she's spending the night at mine, as we'd planned. We've been besties for better part of a decade at this point. Girl says she's not. Friend explains her bag is at mine. With her keys in. Girl says, where do you stay? It's that or I throw you out here. I'm passed out in the backseat unresponsive. Friend eventually gives an address, where she knows she can get in, and immediately tries to contact my roommates. To no avail. I woke up naked. Alone in bed. With a used condom on. You know as much about what happened as I do. My best friend got me plastered drunk. And when I tried to say no she said, do you really think you can say no to me? I didn't even know what had happened until she confessed that she had arped me. Edit. This read confusing to me. So to clarify, I don't remember it happening. Or telling her no. I was blacked out. She confessed to me years later that she was sober enough to know what she was doing was wrong. Knew I couldn't consent. And that I had tried to stop her and she forced me. I only remember waking up naked. With cuts on my back from her fingernails. Was blackout drunk at a party. Got put to bed by a friend. Woke up to a girl bouncing on me. I was 14 and that was my virginity. I didn't feel violated or anything at the time or even today. But I didn't consent at all. But. Edit. Cheers for the awards everyone. A lot are asking how 14-year-olds are drunk. I thought it was common for youngsters to party. Everyone in my town did this. Regardless of the school they attended. Maybe it's Cardiff from a poor region of the UK? To the couple asking if I could have given consent. Impossible. I'd been tucked up to bed spark out. Woke up to the deed being done before swiftly passing back out. I remember it but had it confirmed by the same friend who put me to bed. As he walked in a couple times during. He thought I'd woken up and done it. Naturally. The points on virginity are interesting. Whenever I've said how I lost my virginity. I just said it was that situation but I left out the gory bits. I had a date that led to going back to her house and watching movies, smoking some weed and some drinks. To this day. The most beautiful woman I've ever met and super cool, so I didn't wanna rush anything. I remember drinking one drink. And I got intensely lightheaded and everything was super blurry. And I woke up halfway, I guess is what you would call it. More of a daze really to her on top of me and I passed back out. The next day she was like, I'm so happy that happened and blah blah blah. I didn't speak to her again. And got tested. All is well, no herpes or anything. And it's been 9 months and she doesn't have a kid. So I say all is well. But I definitely didn't consent. I was working at a diner and the girl left me her number. I texted her and she came over after my shift. I had worked 12 hours and got pretty stoned when I got home. Leading to me being too tired to have sex that night. She stayed overnight. And I was woken up the next morning to her riding me. It was a weird feeling to wake up having sex you didn't consent to with someone you don't know. When I was 12. A nurse gave me a routine physical exam and then had me strip naked and lie down on the exam table. Saying it was part of the physical. She groped my testicles and fondled my penis until I got an erection. She then fingered and digitally penetrated my anus. For decades. I assumed it was just an embarrassing incident. It was only when I posted my experience on a Reddit thread and a bunch of people pointed out I had been assaulted that I recognized what happened. I didn't think I'd post about it again, but the attitude of your friend infuriated me because it was the same attitude I held that caused me so much shame. After all, if my dick got hard I must have enjoyed it. Right? It's a terrible and demeaning notion. One that's too often internalized by the abused. I was really young. Stayed at a friend's house. His older sister and her friend got me into her room. Was going to teach me how to kiss. It turned into them using me as an object. I just froze. I was maybe 12? 13? I was so young that girls weren't something I thought of. I liked sports and boy stuff. I didn't tell a soul about it until I was in my 20s. They told as many people as would listen. I denied it and didn't let up. I came very close. At a New Year's party a long time ago. Got extremely hammered and passed out in a bathroom. This girl I'd never met before was offering to help me to the bed downstairs. And the next thing I know, I'm waking up to this girl trying to get me hard. I was so drunk. All I could do was sorta push her off, but she wouldn't stop. Eventually a friend of mine popped his head in and I yelled for him to help me. And he caught on pretty quick and cussed her out until she finally left. My piano teacher, 35F. I was about 11. When I first went. Probably 14 when I finished. She was married. Had a child. It started with comments. Inappropriate ones. Looking back, she was testing the water. Sitting next to me on the piano stool. Hand on legs at times. I remember her telling me my eyes are up here, just to make me feel awkward, when I know I wasn't looking. She then flashed me them saying would I focus now. I was so nervous and had no idea what to say. It got a little bit worse each week. Ever so slowly. I honestly have blanked this out my mind for years. I think she touched me and made me come and that's it. Nothing more. I made an excuse and quit piano to my parents. Never told anyone the full extent. She used to let me get away with not doing piano work and say it was our secret. Which I realized she was encompassing the whole thing being our secret. I'm deeply embarrassed about it. I'm 27 and totally believe my kinks are related to that experience. How messed up, eh? New Year's party when I was 16. Drunk beyond oblivion. Threw up. Passed out. Completely gone. Woke up with some rondo next to me and a used condom on the bed. I didn't bring condoms with me. Even if I had. By the end of that night I couldn't even talk. Let alone have the dexterity to put a rubber on. 2 weeks later. She's telling people we had sex. I messaged her on FB telling her that our pay does constitute as sex and that if she kept on I'd be reporting her. Surprised that my junk works even when comatose though. So every cloud I suppose. I was freshly 21 binge drinking and staying up to the early nights were kinda of the regular when I started hanging out with the wrong crowd. Woke up passed out on the bed at a party and the girl on top of me coked out yelling at me for dick. I was shook, didn't want to do, woke up that morning and got the out of there. That girl doing much better. I see on Facebook she is in a serious relationship and is sober now. Just turned 15. Was seeing a 21-year-old and when we were alone she forced me to have sex with her. Fairly shortly afterwards she physically abused me and left me with long-term injuries. I was scared and confused and spent years lying to myself and everyone around me about the nature of the injuries. It harmed my self-worth and sex in general for a long time afterwards and contributed to me feeling like some of the abusive relationships I was in afterwards were normal because at least it wasn't as bad as that. I ended up being upped a few times by a partner years later. I'm in a pretty good place now after speaking openly with some good friends and processing what happened. If someone is reading this and needs to hear it, you have worth. Find someone you trust and be open about what happened as soon as you can. Don't let how someone treated you inform your worth or normalize abuse. DMs open if you need a chat. It was indescribably traumatizing. They tied me down and made me bleed while attempting to me with various items. We were all in 7th 9th grade at the time. And I hated every second. I pleaded with them to stop and let me go but they just didn't listen to me. No matter how much I cried. When I cried, it seemed to spur them on as if it was some sick reward for what they were doing to me. At the time I didn't know that what they were doing was our pay. I trusted them with my life and the thanks I got was being ed against my will. But it's one thing to just be ed. It's a completely other thing to be forced to act like a dog while this happens to you. It sucked. Thanks to that bull, I now deal with hypersexuality and severe PTSD from the 2.5 years this went on for. I can't believe I didn't think to tell someone. I must have been too ashamed and embarrassed to even utter a word of what was happening to me. In high school I was at a party with my girlfriend. We got into a really heated argument. She left. And I got way too drunk. Fast forward to 2 or 3 AM. And I came out of a blackout. In a hot tub. With a woman I had never met on top of me. With me entirely inside of her. I don't know how long we had sex. But I quickly ended the session. Don't know if this counts as RP. But it definitely felt weird. And she was super awkward afterwards. So I suspect she knows she did something wrong. It happened years ago. When I was 11. I've been in my judo club since age 6. That's where I met my abuser. She was a regular part of the club when I joined and only 4 years older than me. By the time I turned 11 she was her instructor for brown belts. She was always a cheerful and touchy person. But not in the inappropriate way. At least I thought so. But after a few months of her being my instructor she got really sexual with me and convinced me to do stuff with her. I was around 14 in boarding school in Nigeria. No alcohol or anything involved, and it was 4 girls in senior class, and it was some sort of initiation to a gang. I went out to take a pee around midnight. Yeah, the only option was by the bush that late. Remember weeing and they attacked me from behind. They pinned me down and took rounds with me. Couldn't go anymore after the second girl. So they just beat me up pretty bad and left. Didn't say a word about it to anyone till this day. One of the girls was expelled a while later for being pregnant. They pinned in on her school boyfriend at the time. Something still tells me that kid is mine. P.S. I was very scrawny and scared so I don't scream for anything, plus one of them had a machete, tools we use to clear fields from wild grass etc. I'm not capable of saying the story here, but just for awareness. My mother. While I was like 8 to 12. Same here, my mother is a waste of oxygen. I was abused physically, mentally and sexually on the daily until I fought back. Then she spun the story and the cops arrested me at 13 for fighting back. I then had to go to a group home and she had the audacity to pick me up from there and send me to a mental hospital. I'm 40 now, have a loving caring wife and 3 great kids. But my mind is eternally dead. I will not shed one tear when she dies. If you ever need to talk, I'm here. Added. Thank you all for the support. It's nice to know there are good people still out there. It's also nice to have others that have had to deal with that I can relate to. Reddit has helped me so much the short time I've been on it. I wasn't ARPed, but was sexually assaulted. I must have been 4, but maybe 5. Sorry, don't remember when exactly the event took place. What I do know is that the girl next door, a friend to me and my siblings, as I would frequent her house and vice versa, also took me to my sister's room, locked the door, threw me on the bed, and proceeded to make out with me. It only stopped when my sister pounded on the door to be let in. She had made advances in the past. I avoided them. She doped my Gatorade. I woke up to her taking advantage of me. Never told anyone except my wife later down the road. Was sick in bed. She wanted it. She did all of it. Didn't enjoy it one bit. Was 16 at the time and we did have sex before cause she was my girlfriend at the time. Still technically RP. Edit. They knocked me out with a rock. Recorded it. Got pregnant. The only reason I know this is because I took me to court for child support. And literally played them smacking me in the head and doing the deed. And yes, they are in jail right now. And no, I did not want the children because I did not think I would be able to put my own personal feelings aside. Woman here. I think I stopped my friend getting RPed. There was a creepy girl with us at university and she'd always had a weird thing for him. He had a rough night at the pub with us. Clearly having a hard time. And I found him in the pub completely plastered and out of it. She was there and being clingy and weird. I step in to take him home and she's all, "I will come too," and helps me carry him back to his hall room. She kept trying to get me to leave him with her and was being really weird, and I basically refused and said I'd take care of him and made sure she left. I stayed for a while to make sure she was really gone. I told him about it the next day and he was relieved because she had always been inappropriate in trying it on with him. At the time I thought I was probably being paranoid, but after reading this thread I'm super glad I did that. It happened. But it's a very serious thing and I'd rather not share it. But to the people who did share it, you are very brave.